Good morning and welcome to another segment of the Parks and Recreation Legends series that's conducted as part of the American Academy for Parks and Recreation Administration. I'm Ralph Kreider and I'm the former director of the County of Los Angeles Parks and Recreation Department and recently retired from the Long Beach Park System. And I'm delighted to be here this morning to interview a very dear friend who I've known for over 45 years. We've roomed together at many conferences. He's just a great professional, and he's none other than Graham Skea, who is the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation for Orange County, New York.
Thank you very much, Ralph. I'm honored to be here and to have you with me.
Well, that's great. We're going to enjoy this session, Graham.
We certainly will.
Yeah. I would think that people would like to know who are going to watch this tape that a little bit about your personal background and how you got started in the Parks and Recreation field.
Well, after discharge from the Navy in 1949, I was given the opportunity to assume a leadership position as a playground supervisor in the city of East Orange. And I enjoyed that very much. And while attending Uppsala College at the same time, the City Recreation Department gave me the opportunity to direct the programs at teen canteens, basketball leagues at all levels, and to help conduct basketball clinics for young people. After graduating from college, the city had a vacancy in the position of assistant superintendent. A young fellow named Frank Evans had moved on to Caldwell, New Jersey, and I believe that's where you later followed.
I remember Frank well.
Yep, and he went on after Caldwell to go to Maplewood and then back to East Orange and eventually to Raleigh, where he became one of the giants in the field. So I did take that civil service position in East Orange, enjoyed it very much. Ironically, I had to take a civil service examination, and there were only two of us in the room, including Jack Moody, who went on to be the president of the Board of Trustees of the National Recreation and Park Association, and I understand went from Plainfield to Newcastle County, Delaware.
You're right, and I followed him into Newcastle County.
Isn't it?
Oh, it's a small world, isn't it?
The way this world turns, exactly. My interest in the profession, though, really intensified when my department sent me to regional conferences to hear the philosophy, goals, objectives of some of the great leaders in the field. And among the most prominent was a gentleman named Bob Crawford in the city of Philadelphia. Bob came in there from Oakland and brought a lot of new ideas, innovative playgrounds, community centers, community citizen groups in helping to direct the programs. And he and others like yourself.
Oh, thank you. Remember, he also had Charlie Cranford, too.
That's right.
Assistant.
Charlie was his assistant.
Right.
And in East Orange, we were fortunate to have 2 or 3 of the staff members of the National Recreation and Park Association. Their personnel director, Woody Sutherland, who set standards for personnel, was near us. J.W. Faust, their regional director, and people in that category. George Butler, who wrote the book on community recreation,
certainly did.
Was in Bergen County, and staying close and hearing leaders of that stature helped me more than you can ever imagine, and it set me on the right foot philosophically and in integrity.
Graham, I was wondering, you know, you've been in this field for slightly over 50 years now. That's got to be almost some sort of a record, and you're still going strong. But I often wondered, even though you mentioned some of these people that you looked to and was part of your personal history and how you got into the field, but from a mentoring standpoint of view, are there any people that you really looked up to and helped you along and encouraged you, and in these last 50 years?
Well, certainly, as I had mentioned previously, Bob Crawford, was an inspiration to all of us, and he spoke often at conferences or state society meetings. But I was able to broaden the scope of my mentors by attending national conferences where people like Javer Lee from Oakland and William Penn Mott, who went on to be the director of the National Park Service, were doing wonderful, innovative things in playground equipment on the West Coast. And I was able to glean from them many ideas to rejuvenate the parks and playgrounds in East Orange. You'll recall that we created a western town with a real boat nearby with docks. And one of the most interesting innovations that we initiated was bringing in 2 F-9F Panther jets to East Orange, and we put cargo netting up so that the young people could get into the planes, and it just stimulated the whole interest in our playground system.
That one innovation was incredible, because pretty soon all the playgrounds in almost every city in New Jersey had aircraft, and I remember because we had one in Caldwell, because we picked up on what you did in East Orange, and that was quite an interesting type of equipment to have on a playground.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
In 1967, though, Ralph, I decided it was time to move on. I wanted a bigger challenge, and a fellow named Bob Kinsey, brother of the gentleman who wrote the sexual behavior book, was doing a master plan for us in East Orange for one of our playgrounds, and was also doing the same thing in Orange County, New York, and asked if I would be interested in interviewing for that position. And I said sure, and on a hot August night went up to interview by the Orange County Park Commission, and apparently it went very well, and I went around with my family. I have 6 children, 5 girls, 1 boy,
Right.
and my wife, and went up to visit the facilities in Orange County to see what they were like. And it was really just a dirt road leading to a county-owned house, an old farmhouse. There were 4 on the first 400 acres that they bought, and a little picnic grove. And I was asked to help create a county-wide park system, and this was a challenge, that you just couldn't turn down. The people in Orange County had voted in 1963 to provide $900,000 to begin the acquisition of parkland, and they had the vision to see that the sprawl and growth of Rockland County in New York, Bergen County in New Jersey, and Westchester would soon hit rural, bucolic Orange County with its dairy and horse farms, and that open space would disappear. So I came at the right time, and over the years, their vision proved to be invaluable.
You in your services in Orange County, maybe some of the people that might be watching this tape really don't quite understand where that is, but that's where West Point is, and it's right on the Hudson. And I believe the person that you followed, who was there for a short period of time, was Austin Palmer.
That's correct.
Am I right?
Austin Palmer set the tone, and I was able to continue and, expand upon the philosophy that he had presented. He went to West Virginia after leaving Orange
That's
County.
right. That's right, he did. Oh, that's great, Graham. What kind of changes have you observed, in the field over your career thus far?
Well, I think we have to give academia an awful lot of credit. In the 50s, recreation and park administrative curriculum were established in such institutions as Penn State, which I know you're a graduate of, and many of the outstanding professionals in New Jersey were trained under Dr. Fred Coombs at Penn State and stepped in with the real varied background, landscape architecture and organizational skills from universities like Penn State, and I know North Carolina State, Indiana, Illinois, all have presented outstanding curriculums to develop young people to accept this new challenging role in communities. Before World War II, it was neighborhood playgrounds, ball fields, and then recreation became a major component of the community services. The servicemen had seen this on bases throughout the world and wanted the same thing when they returned home. So I think the education that prepared people to provide this leadership was most critical and was the biggest change. You look at the play equipment. We're at our show now, the National Recreation Congress, and whereas traditionally there were swings and slides and some of us were doing creative homemade equipment, now the major playground equipment manufacturers, and many of them have gotten into the field, are doing these imaginative play scopes. And communities are loving it, and the public, the little people, are also enjoying it, and it makes the parks and playgrounds more appealing for everyone.
You bring back some fond memories. As a matter of fact, if you'll recall, I first met you as a intern or doing my student practicum, as they called it, in Montclair, New Jersey from Penn State.
That's right.
And you were president of the New Jersey Recreation Society at that time and welcomed three of us, as a matter of fact, with open arms and started us on our career.
Well, I was very fortunate.
I'm very appreciative of that, Graham.
Oh, thank you very much. I had an excellent superintendent that directed my efforts, a lady named Frances Hare.
Oh, yes, I remember.
And she had a great philosophy and standards and helped me achieve a measure of success. You'll recall that in 1957, I believe it was, our department, a city of 80,000 people, hosted a National Recreation Congress with our New Jersey Society on the boardwalk of Atlantic City, as I like to say.
Yeah.
And that was a great experience working with the staff of NRPA, and I think we did very well.
Well, I remember that very well. You're bringing back some old good times that we had, and just a wonderful period of time in my life and yours
For
as well.
all of us
Yes.
as well, right.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could single out any kind of significant accomplishments that have happened during your career that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I think the most significant and self-gratifying thing that has happened to me in my 35 years in Orange County is that we were able to establish a county-wide park system with 10 parks, 3 historic museums on the National Register of Historic Places, and to meet a wide variety of special interest leisure needs, from 2 golf courses, and we're building a 3rd, riding rings for horses, tennis courts, campgrounds, facilities like that, and one majestic facility that we have on the Hudson River at Kawawasi that looks into the gorge toward West Point. The Hudson is one of the real charming rivers of the world, and to have a park there and that the public can enjoy has really meant a lot to me. But I think the most significant event occurred just last Sunday, Ralph, and we're building an arboretum to broaden the various facilities that we offer. And we were able to do it through private donations. And after September 11th, our friends of the Arboretum Committee wished to do something to commemorate what happened on that date and the lives of the 44 persons from Orange County, half of whom were New York City firemen or Port Authority police, through a memorial. And we were building raised gardens. We had a master plan for this, and I went to see a local recycling firm, Taylor Recycling, that had won the contract from the city of New York to sift through the 700,000 tons of debris from the World Trade Center. They would ship this debris on barges to the Freshkill landfill in Staten Island, and through conveyor belts and all the fine equipment they had, they looked for DNA evidence, rings, even body, you know, and did a magnificent job. And he was a local person that used to do tree work for us in the park system, and I thought he might be interested in sponsoring a raised garden in this arboretum. We had a formal master plan for it, and I went to see him one afternoon, and I said, Jim, would you like to show him the master plan, sponsor one of these raised gardens? He said, gee, that would be nice. I'd like to do this in honor of my father. And I said, that's terrific. And it was 4 raised beds, and I said, we could do this for about $25,000. He said, I'll do it, Graham, count on me. And I left delighted. The next morning, before 9 o'clock, I had a phone call from him saying, yeah, Graham, I spoke with my lawyer. I've spoken to my accountant. We'd like to give to the Friends of the Arboretum $250,000 to build a memorial in memory of these 44 individuals, these heroes who were killed on September 11th. And he said, we'll do this through the sale of wood mulch that wholesale gardeners and homeowners would buy from us, and we'll have all the checks made out to you. So
that was
we weren't sure, but the money did come in, and we were able to build this memorial. We retained the services of an architect who came up with the concept of having a 6-foot granite globe of the world revolving on a thin sliver of water under pressure. And we ordered the globe. It was made in China. It was shipped to L.A. and came through the Panama Canal and on into Port Newark. And with some very heavy equipment, it weighed 10 tons. We were able to put it in a basin, and around the basin was a 10-foot pool. And we had the pool custom made so that there would be a ledge all the way around that could bear bronze plaques with the names of the heroes from Orange County who had lost their lives. And we were able to accomplish all of this, and last Sunday we had the dedication. We invited the surviving families of these heroes, and they were just so delighted. And it was a beautiful program. A local florist gave me 375 roses, red roses in sleeves with baby's breath, went to each surviving family. They walked in with them, and we led the families with an escort of pipes and drums from our Arboretum Education Center and the rest of the crowd was under a tent, and these people had special seats in front, like it was a wedding, with the ribbons on their seats and so on. And the service was beautiful, including music from the pipes and drums, a Sweet Adelines group, an orchestra, and 2 young boys from a local high school band played taps with the Echo. And in response, we had a fellow named Bill Bratton, whose daughter was on the 110th floor of the World Trade Center and had called her dad and that day the attack and asked him what was going on. And he spoke so beautifully and was so grateful that this permanent memorial in a section of the park where people could reflect alone on their losses and what might have been was there for them. And we also had the wife of a chief in the New York City Fire Department, John Williamson. And Mary Williamson spoke so eloquently. She had 3 children and was just so grateful for the dignified program that was created, and to have this 10-ton globe, you know, sort of pointing together how our nation has to pull with the rest of the world to find peace. And I was just so elated that the people felt comforted.
Yeah,
felt so comforted with it. And the roses were placed on each of the little plaques of their loved ones, and they tell me now that people are coming in with little cards that they're putting
marvelous.
on.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I filled up 5 or 6 times during the ceremony, and I was conducting.
Sure, you're making me fill up right now.
Really.
That was an incredible project. What an accomplishment that is, and it just happened, Graham.
That's it. It was just this past Sunday, October 13th, 2002.
Oh, it's marvelous. Gosh, I'm not sure I even want to ask you this question, because, but I should, because the people who are going to be watching the tape would certainly want to know from you, Graham, in particular, because of your length of time in the field thus far. You know, what does it really take to work in this field? What kinds of skills and attributes do you feel go into making an outstanding administrator in our field? I mean, you know, you've done so far, we've talked about many things, but are there some particular skills and attributes that you'd say that one really needs to have or acquire in order to be successful?
Well, certainly you need the educational and training background, but the most important personal skill, I believe, that you need is integrity in dealing with your employees, in dealing with the public, in dealing with elected officials. You must be totally honest. You must love what you're doing. You must believe in it totally, and be prepared to enunciate the changes or recommendations that you make.
What kind of things that were, well, most rewarding or significant, even significant problems have you experienced? In other words, how do you feel about the parks and recreation profession as general? We've had a lot of ups and downs. We've had tremendous budgetary problems over the years, ever since I've been into the field, and salary issues, and you know, and all kinds of taxpayers' revolts that have rolled across the country, and recessions and things. And so we've had some pretty tough times. But did you have some very significant problems you'd like to share? And then, of course, just conversely, what were some of the most rewarding ones? Now, you just mentioned one, you know, previously, but could you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, certainly the image of Parks and Recreation has been greatly enhanced over the years, and through citizen groups on the outside pressing municipalities for a greater effort to preserve open space, preserve historic structures, preserve farmlands. Many communities and states are having incentives so that we don't continue this great urban sprawl. You know, everyone on a 2-acre lot and the whole countryside is decimated. That has made it very interesting. But for personal satisfaction, Ralph, when we can move forward and preserve this open space, stone houses were built in 1768, 1769. The families come back to you, the descendants, and are so pleased. We were able to preserve a 1-mile stretch of the Delaware and Hudson Canal, you know, which of course runs from the Delaware River to the Hudson River in New York. They used to bring the coal from the mines of Pennsylvania on these canal barges, and through intensive hand labor were able to dig these canals and berms and bring the coal all the way to Kingston, New York, and then down the Hudson River, you know, to fuel the buildings of New York City. And to preserve this part of history, extremely gratifying. And naturally, having the opportunity to open 9 or 10 parks, and one of the more recent things were these rails to trails facilities. We have about 10 miles now, and the popularity is just overwhelming of the numbers of people that are out there rollerblading, bicycling, walking daily.
Right.
And to the self-satisfaction that it gives you, you can't believe, Ralph, and I know you've been through it, but when you dedicate a facility and see the faces of the young people and adults who are enjoying it,
And
it makes you feel so good, a feeling that you can't compare anywhere. And that
the readaptive use of some of these things. So
yes,
that, I mean,
exactly.
Here they were built years and years ago, and you were mentioning like 1700s, because the East is very rich in historic structures and things. But even more recently, a half century ago with the WPA, and have left us with marvelous walls and even comfort stations and things like this that are still standing today in many parks and stadiums and things that have been very significant in terms of some of the things that you have helped preserve.
Thank you.
I was wondering what you might think is maybe one or several of the largest needs that our profession, in our profession. Are there any particular thing or things that stick out in your mind of needs, things we really need to do?
Well, we still need to do a much better job of marketing the value of parks and recreation. The National Recreation and Park Association, I think, has done an excellent job with its benefits program. What are benefits? It's well-being, your health, and being active. I've had heart surgery and went through a cardiac rehab program, and being active is so good for your blood pressure and everything else. And mentally keeping active with others, our senior programs, our golf, of course, and tennis, senior games.
Lifetime sport kinds of activities.
Exactly. And I think, you know, we have to get across better through our marketing efforts and meeting with community groups, the benefits that will accrue for a longer life, happiness. Many of our programs bring people together that result in lifetime marriages and what have you. And
so NRPA is right on with this slogan, and all these things that we're trying to do in terms of the benefits are endless. And
oh, certainly.
you
They're
know.
on the cutting edge. People
Right.
like Kathy Spengler, you know, who has been in the forefront promoting this, and Ellen O'Sullivan.
Right.
You know, it's just so valuable, and I think many, many people are buying into it today, and as a result, the obesity and staleness of sitting in front of a tube, you know, may be diminishing through the promotion of leading an active life.
I think we're headed in the right direction in that program. I believe in it very strongly, as you know as well. I was wondering what advice you might offer to somebody who is about ready to enter the field, or some of the students you met just kind of coincidentally yesterday when we were coming back from a session. We met 4 students from my university, as a matter of fact, and the head of the curriculum there, and we were talking about a number of things, and they seemed so eager and everything. So, you know, what kind of advice would you give somebody like that that's ready
Well, they
to...
were an enthusiastic group
Yes, they
from
were.
Penn State, and you know, we're just all ears. You know, I think they were attending their first national conference, and if I had advice for them, I would suggest they follow the route that helped me so much, and to adopt a mentor, and try to emulate the achievements of that mentor, the philosophy of that mentor in their lives and in their program planning. And of course, all of us, the college training is wonderful, but continue your training by attending local conferences, national conferences. Whenever you reach the point where you don't think you need any more, you've really lost it, because we can all gain something at these various conferences that are offered, be a state
Right.
conference, a regional conference, and the national is invaluable. And that's what did so much for me.
So mentoring and continuing on with career development, you would say, are probably
Yes.
the 2 biggest things that you would give as advice. I was wondering, what do you foresee as the future of parks and recreation in this country, or for that matter, the world?
Well, I think it's going to expand, because people are going to recognize through programs the positive benefits, again, of leading an active life for their health, well-being, and just enjoyment. And I see that increasing, and that the public will be so much better served through it.
And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you what your philosophical beliefs are, and in terms of what guided, helped to guide your career all these years.
Well,
I know that's a tough one, but
yeah, yes,
we
it
don't
is.
think about those things
that's
too
a difficult
often. But
one. And I believe that to be successful, you have to communicate, and you communicate through working with citizen groups. Find out where their interests are. You don't set the program or the project. Find out from the community what facilities they want. Be active in the community. Be a member of your local Human Rights Commission, your historic society, and all of the other groups, service clubs that you have. And this way, you can reflect where the public interests lie. And also, in what you do, you'll be meeting the needs that they advocate for the municipal or county governments to provide. So I would...
That's very interesting, Graham, because I remember when I was growing up, and of course, I'm sure that you learned the same thing or were taught the same things, and it was because we're now being educated, you know, we now know what the needs are of the people and how wrong and that is today, but it was kind of right at the time because there were no educated leadership out there. It was basically volunteers who weren't trained, although volunteers are great to have then and today as well. But so we kind of had that philosophy that, you know, now that we're educated, we kind of know. And that hasn't worked well, you know, in modern day. Today, you know, we're out there to meet with the public, as you indicated, and join these organizations and find out what people really need. It's interesting how that's kind of changed.
How it's evolved.
Yeah.
But one of the major keys to success, I think, is the formation of friends organizations.
These 501c3s.
Yes,
you know,
and encouraging that. Government can no longer afford to meet the costs of some of these amenities that the public would like to see preserved. And through the efforts of a friends organization, the private sector, corporations, and others, we found will readily donate money to make some of these programs available, and they're happy to do it. There are tax advantages to it. And I guess the greatest benefit of all of a friends organization is the broad base of support that you build. People from all walks of life may have this special interest, and in gaining elected official support, legislative support, if there's a broad base of public support of active individuals advocating for you, you're going to be much more successful. I think that's the key today for public recreation agencies and even for private agencies. They're all doing it. Be active with your United Way, and the broad citizen backing will get you the facilities and programs and leisure opportunities the public is clamoring for.
You know, we were talking just a few minutes ago about, you know, what advice you give to somebody entering the field. It occurred to me that I'd be interested, and I'm sure the people that would be watching this tape in the future might be interested in when we talk about educating our young people to become park and recreation professionals, what are some of the courses and things that you think that maybe they ought to have? Now, you know, we got a lot of universities doing a lot of different kinds of programming and you know, and the various course subjects they take, but sometimes, at least my experience has been that sometimes I wish they had learned, you know, or were taught other kinds of programs or courses in college. Are there, and this is not to belittle the colleges or universities at all, they're doing a marvelous job, but do you have any thoughts in that direction?
Well, I think certainly the practicum work or internships would be invaluable with the college credits for it. And where, you know, they talk about people being wet behind the ears, where the college student, I think, gets a shock is a major part of your job is selling your programs, selling your budgets, selling your proposed acquisitions. And the ability to deal with elected officials effectively is so critical. You have to be respectful, supportive of them, understand their concerns, their responsibilities. The people out in the community don't want tax increases.
Right.
School taxes are soaring, and yet there has to be a balance in each of the communities to provide the quality of life that everyone wants. So I think getting them in the field and working with a trained professional in dealing with elected officials to see what you're up against. It can be a shock.
Yeah. I agree, because it was a shock to me too. I thought, you know, all the academic courses and things would probably take care of it, but it isn't quite that way when you get out there, and you have to deal with politicians as well as your knowledge of programs and how to administer various things. We've got about a minute left, Graham. I'm sorry. And is there anything else really quickly you might want to
No,
say?
but just in response to what you just said, it's amazing you'll find as a professional, I guess in many fields, how many experts are developed through the election process. Once a person is elected to office, they become experts on turf and building design and operational procedures, and it seems so ironic. But this is a tremendously rewarding field, self-satisfaction, and you're doing something for others that will be there probably forever. The facilities that we create and the open space and historic sites that are protected.
Well,
gives you
I understand, and you know, this has been wonderful, Graham. I've enjoyed this 45 minutes with you, and our time is up. We could spend a day talking about all kinds of different things that I think would be interesting to the public, but I want to thank you very much on behalf of the Academy
and
for
thank
sharing
you, Ralph.
your experiences.
Certainly a model for all of us for what you accomplished.
You're the guest today, and what an honor and a privilege
Thank you.
Have the opportunity to interview you for the Legends program.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.